I guess, how are you would be as good as anything to open with.
I'm kind of weary.
Are you wiped out from the jet trip?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah. I appreciate the amount of miles you have been covering to get here, and you were delayed, and it was a ghastly story, but it's nice of you to come and put up with it all. I'm so self-conscious. I don't know what to do, because we spoke on the phone for over 6 hours, and a lot of it was about what neither of us can stand about this kind of program. To the point where now I don't know how to avoid all that stuff. Will you help me as we move along?
Well, I think that I had a special treat because you allowed me to come into your life, and Dick described his background as a young boy in Nebraska, which I think would be worth telling for about 20 minutes. You mind if I go into all that?
I'd love it. I've suddenly forgotten it all.
Yeah.
Anyway, have you seen any good movies lately?
Super Rich Shadow?
Oh, that's supposed to be in my dressing room. Oh. No, that's part of the. That's merely part of the commercial. Where was I? Do you go to the movies? Come to think of it.
Once in a while.
I'll tell you what happened. We talked on the phone, and at one point in the conversation, you reeled off about 7 or 8 things that you had observed about me watching the show, about how I sometimes don't like people and pretend that I do, and vice versa, and about a dozen more. And they were so uncanny and on the nose that I decided I could never work again. And now I feel it. Would you like a glass of water?
A bug just flew out of my glass.
I know it. I'm terribly embarrassed. As he started to pour the water, a bug flew out. Probably a critic. Anyway. Let me ask you an obligatory question, and we can get that out of the way right now. And if at any time I get into things that you don't want to talk about, give me a signal, puff out your cheeks.
Throw the picture at you.
That'd be fine. If you had the Academy Awards night to do over again, would you do any of that differently?
Well, I don't think so, no. I felt that that there was an opportunity for, since the American Indian hasn't been able to hear his voice heard, or have his voice heard, anywhere in the history of the United States, I felt that it was a marvelous opportunity for an Indian to be able to voice his opinion to 85 million people. I guess that was the number. And I felt that he had a right to, in view of what Hollywood has done to him. And I was embarrassed for Shasheen. She wasn't able to say what she intended to say. And I was distressed that people should have booed and whistled and stomped, even though perhaps it was directed at myself. They should have at least had the courtesy to listen to her. But I think she did very well, and I was very glad that she did have what opportunity she had to say what she did. And
why didn't you get to read your entire statement as you planned it?
Well, I think that they felt that it was inappropriate, and I actually don't know. I think they didn't want her there. They didn't want the evening interrupted with that particular note. And from their insular point of view, I felt that perhaps they had a point. But I don't think that people generally realize what the motion picture industry has done to the American Indian. As a matter of fact, all ethnic groups all minorities, all non-whites. And people just simply don't realize, they just took it for granted that that's the way people are going to be presented, and these cliches were just going to be perpetuated. And so when someone makes a protest of some kind and says, no, please don't present the Chinese this way, or please, I mean, on this network every night, well, perhaps not every night, but you can see silly renditions of human behavior. The leering Filipino houseboy, the wily Japanese, or the kook or the gook, and the idiot black man, and the stupid Indian, and it just goes on and on and on. And people actually don't realize how deeply these people are injured by seeing themselves represented, not so much the adults because they're already inured to that kind of pain and pressure, but children, Indian children, seeing Indians represented as savage, as ugly, as nasty, vicious, treacherous, drunken. They grow up only with a negative image of themselves, and it lasts a lifetime. Is that an answer to your question?
Yeah. Did you expect the kind of outrage that you got from people? I believe, well, that very night, Raquel Welch made a joke against you, saying that I hope the next person doesn't have a cause. Who's the Indian? Who's the Western star who followed later? Steve McQueen. Clint Eastwood, yes, of course. I very seldom make mistakes. He did his version of a joke, and then John Wayne looked like he was about ready to get a posse together. He looked so sore. Did that surprise you, that they would be angered that you desecrated their cathedral?
I wasn't surprised, no. There were a number of people that felt that Sachin had not been welcomed and not been treated properly, and people that were sympathetic to what she was trying to say. And I received an awful lot of mail in support of that.
The booing made me sore.
Well, actually, I think the people were booing at me. They were booing because they thought, well, this moment is sacrosanct, and you're ruining our fantasy with the intrusion of a little reality. And I suppose it was perhaps unkind of me to do that, but there was a larger issue, and it's an issue that nobody in the motion picture industry has ever addressed themselves to, unless forced to. I mean, the blacks have brought about changes because they were just damn angry about it. And they thumped the tub and threatened and made some noise about it. But if they had just been silent and thought, well, gradually wisdom will come to those who are in the business of the movies, and they will do right by us, and today would never have come. We, have a lot to be grateful for, that the blacks were as insistent as they were that the image of blacks were changing, but it's a block by block fight. It's people are very timorous now about showing blacks in an unkindly light, but they would go on with the Filipino houseboy or the Indian. I mean, you see it every day on television. Not every day.
There's a World War II movie in which, actually it's John Wayne again, I don't mean to pick on him, in which he refers to Mr. Tojo's little yellow-bellied rats. And there was so much racism in World War II movies. You see, it's really, really surprising. I mean, it was so crude that it's worse than you remember it. The thing that bugged me, too, was that people said, there's Brando jumping on a social cause bandwagon now, getting in on the Indians, forgetting that in the 50s you were I think one of the first people, fishing with the Puyallup Indians up on the West Coast. How much of what's been written about you can be trusted? There are a couple of books. There's...
Well, I've noticed that you always say, you look at your notes and you say to the interviewee.
Yes.
It was once, someone said about you once that this and that and the other thing, and it's, I always wondered why you did that.
Looked at them or said it?
Yeah, said it.
Well, if I look at them and say nothing, the show becomes so quiet that nobody can actually hear. You mean,
but
am
I
cheating
think
in
that
some way, or-
the press is a poor, very poor reference for knowing somebody. I don't think that you... I don't know what to say about that.
Yeah. Well, there are 2 books in print purporting to tell the story of your life, your rages, your excesses, your lusts, your dreams. I think that I'm almost quoting from the cover of one of them. Can we trust those? And if not, how do they get away with it?
I don't think it's worth going into. I mean,
On their part or mine?
No, well, news, of course, is big business, and there are news items that are worth $100. There are some that are worth several $1,000s. Some news items are worth $100,000, and some are $2 items. But news is business, and people sell news. And unfortunately, people in my position, people in the public eye, are sellable commodities, but they're not any different than Kleenex or Dial soap or anything else. And so if we, find something out that's about your sex life or something that you do with your fingernails after you cut them off,
Who told you, man?
if you smoke the grime from your navel, then that's big news. That's important. He's Dick Cavett. Smokes the grime from his navel and he saves his fingernail parings.
I'd rather you hadn't mentioned that about me. I revealed that to you in private, and I thought I could trust you.
But anyway, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because finally, and I've found that people really don't believe all the nonsense they read. And they look at you when they meet you and wonder if it's true. Mm-hmm. But they finally make a decision on what their experience with you personally is. If it's for 5 minutes, or, if you say thank you to the hostess and she brings you a cup of coffee, well, then she thinks you're a courteous person. If you're tired and cranky and you're ill or something and you don't want to be disturbed or sign autographs and things like that, then they say, well, he's a kind of a funny person. But,
so whether or not you threw horse manure out of the top window of your old place on 52nd Street when you were young and yelled, watch out for the flying red horse, which is I'm just picking one at random that they always seem to write about you, is irrelevant. When people are watching you on the screen, I don't know whether they wonder if those things... But I always wonder, if those aren't true, then where do they come from?
Well, but I think you...
And did you?
I think that that's a kind of a question that... Well, there's a perfect example.
Yeah.
On your show, you have money items as well. You have items that you sell to the audience and items that were entertaining or they offer some sort of sparkling interlude for what otherwise might be a sea of dullness.
Of dullness?
Yeah, I mean, if you have a guest that's very boring and you ask them some question like that, well, I'm getting far afield. I think that you have to think about your ratings when you're giving the show, when you're doing the show. And you have to make the show as interesting as possible. And to the question of whether or not I throw manure out of, or What was it?
Fourth-story window of a house on 52nd
yeah.
Street.
I threw manure out of some window. It's sort of provocative, and people would rather listen to that than listen to the fact that yesterday the Supreme Court refused to hear the Pyramid Lake water right issue. I mean, that's part of the sea of dullness.
Yeah.
People don't want to hear that. They want to know. They want to hear me describe how I might have put the